Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me here today to share with you my story in about 20 or 30 minutes. So you know it will be abbreviated, hopefully to encourage you to get the book. No, just teasing. Just teasing. From Liberty to Magnolia, in search of the American dream. It is scheduled to come out in October or September, October timeframe. But in the meantime, you can also check with my website, which is genesisellis.com, and I write there all the time. But my story is one that epitomizes not only my life, but the lives of many women, black or white, and minorities. It shows the enduring scourge of racism and sexism in America and how it plays out in our lives, despite the great promise of the American dream. The American dream is supposed to be available to and accessible by everyone, but we know still in 2017, we have a long way to go. We've made a lot of progress, but we have a long way to go in terms of making sure that the rules of the playing field are equally and fairly applied to everyone, irrespective of their skin color or their gender. We also know that in terms of real life, we all come to the table with different value sets and different qualifications, but they may not always come into play when decisions are made. It is my hope that From Liberty to Magnolia will help every decent and fair-minded American, and maybe American as a nation, see how it has and continues to be enslaved by its own sense of freedom. A freedom that boasts and find it acceptable to persistently disrespect, deny, and sometimes minimize the value of two of its greatest assets, women and minorities. When there is overwhelming evidence that we have so much to gain by embracing diversity and inclusion. When it comes to my book, I didn't target it to just blacks or minorities, but I targeted for people from all walks of life. Not only men, women, but people who want us all to realize the American dream. The book will inform the racist and the non-racist, the sexist and the non-sexist, but more importantly, I'm hoping that it will inspire and empower men and women, girls, young people, older people, to continue to say, we're in a position to do something about it. We can have the will and the courage to make a difference. Parents, teachers, human rights activists, journalists, business leaders, organizations. As my story unfolds in the book, it shows that while we have made progress, a lot of progress, we still have a long way to go. As it was stated, I was born on a farm in Mississippi. My dad had 7 children, and it was a small house, a very small house. It was 9 of us. And so during the 60s and 70s, that was a very turbulent time in our history. My dad was one who actually helped to register people to vote. And as the times would have it, there were dangerous times in Mississippi during that time. I grew up at a time when my father and many of our neighbors were terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan. My book is entitled Between Liberty and Magnolia because I grew up on a road that connected those two iconic towns. There are towns in Mississippi called Liberty and Magnolia. It was a farm life where, on any given day, you could think about the cotton fields where Black children had to work, whether it was your cotton field or someone else's, or you could try to grab the books that you wanted to achieve and try to learn to go better, to be better. I chose both. I saw that books would be my ticket out. It would be my way of gaining access to the American dream. I must tell you that the Civil Rights Act, it has been, 50 years since it was passed. It has been about the same time that the Equal Rights Amendment has been fought for. However, after 50 years, and Congress, every Congress in the United States, since 1972, they have ratified, rather passed the Equal Rights Amendment, but it has never been ratified. It is not in the U.S. Constitution to this day. That bespeaks of a culture that has the grips on us in terms of what society should say the women's roles ought to be. I always get stressed when I'm talking about myself and my family. But the U.S. Constitution still does not have a provision for the equal rights of women, still. So as I was looking at my journey from Mississippi, where I grew up on this long, dusty road, I even say, life in Magnolia and Liberty did not represent what those iconic names mean. Liberty, you should be free. Free to dream and free to achieve anything you want to achieve. You're a magnolia, or my magnolia. But life for my family and many families was not that at all. I even laugh about the road between Magnolia and Mississippi being segregated, part gravel, part paved. You could leave out of Magnolia as paved, and you saw beautiful brick antebellum homes. Drive 3 miles down the road, and you saw frame houses, some painted, some not painted, some in good shape, some not, the gravel road where Blacks stayed. Then you can drive another few miles, and the road is paved again. And you know you're approaching Liberty, Mississippi. And Liberty was a town where, I don't know how many of you saw the Freedom Riders documentary? There's a documentary there, a section of the documentary that shows the life of Herbert Lee. Herbert Lee Jr. and I were classmates. Mississippi, no matter what we think of the Civil Rights era, was the epicenter of it all. No matter what was going on in Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, or even across the nation, Mississippi was the epicenter of it all. My dad's farm was about 80 miles south of Jackson, Mississippi. And Mississippi was the place where Emmett Till, you remember Emmett Till, a 14-year-old boy, was killed and buried because he supposedly whistled at a white woman. Mississippi was the place where Medgar Evers, the NAACP local branch president, was assassinated in Jackson. Mississippi was the place where you had James Meredith integrating the University of Mississippi with the National Guard. later shot because he was marching down the street to say, we don't have fear. We're marching against fear. When I was a girl going to school, I remember just like the presenter, and I don't remember your name, Portia. I related to you because my parents had 7 kids. My dad made a $40 a week job. There was no way they were going to finance my education. So I delved into books, but I also delved into books because I was afraid of everything that moved, worms, flies, it didn't matter. So my dad made me actually get out of the field one day because I so terrified him. He was in a field plowing with the mule, and my brothers had picked off caterpillars and put them on my cotton sack. And they said, look at your cotton sack, Janice, look at your cotton sack. I looked back and I thought I saw 1,000 worms. So I was hysterical. And my dad dropped his plow in the other field, running, just knew I was snake bitten. He came and he saw these little caterpillars and he told my mom, get her out of here before I hurt her. Because this girl is going to lose her mind right here in the field. So my job, I'm diversing a little bit, but my job on the farm then became, I was the cook. You know, at 8 or 9 years old, I had to cook for 9 people. And I had 4 brothers who were brutal. They would pass my biscuits because they were hard, or my dad would tell my mom he couldn't eat my cornbread. So I thought, what am I going to do for my worth in this family? So I delved into books. And I delved into books. I went to school, made good grades to make my parents proud, to say I'm worthy of something. But a teacher saw that I wanted to do something. College was out of reach for me. And he made sure that I got into Tougaloo College. How many of you know Tougaloo College? Historically, it is one of the best private academic schools in the South. But more importantly, it led the civil rights activity in Mississippi. So I'm going to Tougaloo. Well, one day I met the mailman who was very friendly. And he asked me, what are you going to do, Janice, when you get out of high school? I said, I'm going to college. He said, where? I said, Tougaloo. And he braced. The next day, he comes to my dad's farm. He delivers a package, and my mom says, Mr. Cottrell was acting strange today. I said, oh, I met him yesterday, and he was fine. I got stamps. She said, well, what did he say? I said, he asked me what I was going to do. I told him I was going to Tougaloo. My mother flipped out. She said, you did not tell him you were going to that school. I said, yes, Mother, I did. Well, at the time, Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, Andrew Young, all the civil rights leaders would meet at Tougaloo College and organize the demonstrations in Jackson, Mississippi. And my mom said, oh, my God, you know, you shouldn't have done that. You're going to hurt your dad's chances to buy seeds at the feed and seed store in Magnolia, because they're thinking that we're encouraging you to go to the school. Well, I said, no, Mother. She said, just be quiet. You know, it just really startled me because they were just that fearful. Well, when I went to Tougaloo College, I was so taken with trying to make something of myself and be a part of making things better, that I was very much influenced by that. And so I said, okay, what do I do? What can I do? Well, in 1968, when the Tougaloo College Choir was performing at Carnegie Hall, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And it left, like it did on many people across the country, a lasting impact on my life. So what did I do? I said, well, what can I do? I left Tougaloo College, went to Millsaps College, that was 3 or 4 miles down the road, a predominantly white college, and I helped to integrate Millsaps College. And what would you guess? My roommate and I, one day, we were in our dormitory, and the Klan circled the dorm. It was at night. They had their torches. The dorm mother took Lily and myself into her quarters to make sure no harm would come to us. But Lily and I, it was 6 of us. I said, well, they don't know us, so they cannot be doing anything in terms of us. So we talked that night, and I said, I tell you what we do. She said, don't you see kids getting off the sidewalk? I said, well, yeah, but they don't know us. So one day, we went to the cafeteria, and we thought we would sit down and eat, but each time we sit down and eat, we clear a table. So this particular day, we cleared 10 tables before people would sit and eat with us. I say that to say that my upbringing, my parents, what they experienced, what my family, my siblings experienced, could have colored my life and how I saw things, but it did not. Because I knew back then that you cannot categorize a whole group of people based on a few, and I never have. In the meantime, when I started my career, I came front and center with being Black and woman. Both of those things impacted my life, throughout my life. I have often said I have lived the chicken-egg conundrum. When I walk into a room, what do you see first? A Black, a woman, or Black. And yet, I have thought, well, I may not have the scarlet letter on my head, but I have 2 big sable ones on my head. And it interplays, consciously or unconsciously. It is a dubious distinction that we carry. And I think I used to be, concerned about that. But as I have lived my career, I have been very clear about my purpose. My purpose is something beyond myself. It is to do what I can to help others. And that is what guides me, that has guided me. My mother says I'm driven. She's 100 years old. She'll be 101 on Thursday. And she would say, thank you. She would say, I don't know, how many of you remember Walter Cronkite, CBS News, and Eric Sevareid? Well, we got a TV when I was 14, and my mom and I used to watch Cronkite and Sevareid every day. And I would tell my mom, someday I'm going to do what Sevareid does. And because what he did, when Kennedy was assassinated, he came on the news and he put it all in perspective, because it was 100 years since we had experienced an assassination, and that was who? Abraham Lincoln. And so I knew then, I didn't quite understand the connection, but I knew that this was a very significant point in our nation's history. Well, Sevareid would come on every day, and he would put that in perspective for you. So I would tell my mom, someday I'm going to do what Sevareid does. She would look at me and says, you are building air castles. Women or Blacks are not doing what Sevareid does. Now, she didn't say that to discourage me. She said that to say, I don't want you putting your dreams somehow out there and end up broken because you can't achieve them. Well, she thinks I'm stubborn and I am, and I did not let that stop me, okay? So what I did over time, I said, okay, I'm going to get as good as I can be, study, try to understand the political process and all those things so that I can be good at trying to do what Sevareid does. Well, in the meantime, the cultural pressures got in the way. Family. wanting to be married and have children, and still wanting to make something of my life. And I describe in my book the sense of myself and saying that I'm a woman and I can do and I can perform, and at the same time being confronted with all the cultural forces in my life. So, what did I do? I got married, and at the same time, I received fellowships from the University of Wisconsin to complete my PhD. Well, that was my dream. It wasn't our dream. And I stayed in a marriage for 8 years that was emotionally and physically abusive. I went to the University of Wisconsin, 6 months pregnant, had my baby by myself, took a cab to the hospital. My husband joined me, but it wasn't Frank. He tells me, please, when you tell that story, do not make clear that it's not me. No, it's not Frank. But long story short, I came front and center with some real collisions in my life. Dreams met reality. Let me just be brief, and I detail them in my book. Of course, I was in an abusive marriage for 8 years. I went to graduate school pregnant. I had both my babies in graduate school, labor pains in class. I had professors. There were only 4 women at the University of Wisconsin at the time. I'm the only black, but they were not very encouraging. I had one professor tell me, Janice, when Jo Claire got pregnant with Kathy, she couldn't finish her master's. I just looked at him. I thought, okay, that was Jo Claire. That is not me. So, long story short, I went and I still wanted to do whatever I did. I stumbled into my second master's, just taking all the courses about political socialization and how to shape public opinion and those kinds of things. And then I leave Madison, two masters in hand, all my coursework for my PhD. My ex-husband had his law degree. Fine, I still wasn't discouraged. But I get to the corporate world, the environment. My second collision. I walk into the city hall, and I am told that the only job available is a $9,000 job. I have 2 masters, all my coursework for my PhD. At the information booth, telling people, bathroom is over here, bathroom is over there, tax commission is over here. I gladly did it for 18 months. I had 2 children. I was in the midst of a divorce. And then one day, the mayor's office had a vacancy. My second collision. I worked for the mayor's office for 8 years. He looked at my resume, and he saw I was a math major as an undergraduate, and he assigns me the city budget. I do the city budget. He says, Janice, I want you to change the system. I want you to go out and research the municipal budgeting. I did that. Came up with the budgeting system that the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, adopted as a model, invited me to Bonn, Germany, to an international symposium to present the budgeting system, and then the budget director retires. And what would you guess? Mayor calls me in. Janice, he said, I know that you would be good as a budget director. He said, but the South Side of Milwaukee will never let a black woman be over the purse strings of the city. I will be voted out of the office, and black people don't vote. He said, just think about it. He said, now you can be the tax commissioner. And I said, but Mayor, I don't know anything about property appraising. Oh, you're a quick study. You can learn property appraising. He said, just think about it. So I thought about it. 2 weeks later, I walked in. I said, Mayor, I think after 8 years, I think I've done as much as I can. Janice, you shouldn't. If you're going to leave, think about it. Just think about it. If you leave now, the newspaper will make a heyday over it. They'll say you're not promoted because of racism. And I said, Mayor, I can't control that. And sure enough, I left, and the newspaper made hay out of it. How many of you know Yale in the newspaper? Yale was in Milwaukee at the time. and wrote about it. So that was collision number 2, because I thought, research this system 8 years, and yet I cannot run the budgeting department that was created. How much time do I have? How much time? My husband's time. Okay, fine. Okay. Fast forward. And I say this because, again, we've made a lot of progress, but we still have a long way to go. I left the mayor's office, got into corporate America, big pharmaceutical company, and went in as a director. The 6 or 7 years I was there, the evaluations were either unsatisfactory, satisfactory, good, excellent, or outstanding. What would you guess? I made 1 excellent the first quarter I was there. The rest of the 6, 7 years, I made all outstandings. I would get sent to Maui for 2 weeks, all expenses paid, widescreen TVs, great cash bonuses, and every time there was a vacancy in my department to be promoted to vice president, I was not promoted. I trained 4 vice presidents in marketing, communications, and managed healthcare during the 6 years I was there. I share this because, again, change comes slowly. To this day, I was just reading a Forbes magazine article. Today, out of the Fortune 500 companies, there are 20 women CEOs. There was 1 black, only 1 black ever, but there is no longer a black CEO. And in terms of senior management in the top corporate America, women and minorities still are underrepresented. Now, we shouldn't be discouraged by that, okay? And what I'd like to do is share with you why we shouldn't be discouraged. And I'm just going to share with you just an excerpt from my book. From Liberty to Magnolia describes my journey as an American who assumed that liberty and all the freedoms and all the inalienable rights it represents empowered me to pursue and achieve my American dream, my Magnolia. A fulfilling life of my own choosing, my own making as a black and as a woman, or as a woman or black, whichever comes into play in any situation. As tough, as challenging, as fearful as that journey has sometimes been, I have achieved much and realized a measure of a fulfilling life, a life that keeps me striving. I will be at it until the last breath is in me, and I'm hoping I live to be 100 like my mom. Striving to make a difference. But many Americans find themselves in pursuing the American dream somewhere between liberty and their Magnolia. They want to believe in those individual rights afforded to all Americans, irrespective of their skin color or their gender. They move through life armed with that belief, only to run into situations that render that belief suspect, if not indeed untrue. If you are a minority or woman, your rights are tested and often compromised when it comes to equal employment, equal housing, equal education. And often it's just a nagging, persistent thing that we have to work at every day. Many Americans find themselves on a perpetual treadmill, walking and running as the terrain under their feet keeps changing. Sometimes progress, or the like thereof, make it difficult to determine if they will ever reach their Magnolia, their destination, their American dream. Until race and gender cease to be major barriers in contemporary American society, how can most women, I'm not talking about the few of us who get there, but the few of us, some of us get there, but how can most women and most minorities achieve their dreams and their magnolias? You say, what games? What dreams? We all know a few of them. the games that are played when applicants apply for a job or when it's time to get a promotion. I lived through those experiences, irrespective of my performance. So, in the meantime, you can't be dismayed. I was never dismayed. Don't accept the state of being somewhere between Liberty and Magnolia. Don't accept that. I remain hopeful and determined to keep tugging on the wheels even after 40 years of still believing, still persisting, and still trying to do what I can do. My life is a testament of a real change that comes over time. And I want you to see that really what we have to do is just continue each opportunity to make a change and to make it different. My book is dedicated to, again, women and girls who believe that they can be good mothers, good wives, but also good people when it comes to advancing society. My book is dedicated to those men and women who see gender and skin color, gender and skin color, not as deficits, but as assets. To those groups that have been tagged as minorities, I'm here to tell you, we are all, each of us, we are a member of a minority of some sort at some point in our lives. And it's nothing to be ashamed of or feel bad about, but to be embraced and celebrated. And I'm hopeful that as we keep tugging, each of you keep working and keep having an open mind and keep knowing that change, improvement comes over time in small increments, and we just have to stay at it. From Liberty to Magnolia chronicles my life, but it is a microcosm of many lives. But it also chronicles my hope and my determination to keeping on, to make America a great nation. Thank you.